I've been learning the Chinese language Mandarin for the last 6 years, and I recently went over to China to try and teach the English language to students in a middle school. My efforts were severely lacking in organisation, and I realised that I did not have the ability to assess the level of language that each of my approximately 1,400 students had.
The classrooms that I was put into had about 70 students in each class, and I was expected to take 20 lessons of different classes of students. I quickly tired of my initial lesson plan that involved my introducing myself and my country. I found that interaction with the students proved difficult as they did not respond to the typical interrogation technique Western students use, asking the students to raise their hand in response to a question. I did not think I could take for granted that any of the students had any level of English proficiency. I did not know where to start teaching, so I returned home after a few days. In my own learning of Chinese, the first thing I was introduced to was the phonetic system known as pinyin. Mandarin uses syllables as a basic unit of speech, and these are commonly represented by thousands of different characters. Each of the characters require memorization of how they will sound when spoken, and variations to characters supply very little information in this regard. The pinyin system is a set of letters that spell out a syllable that match the component sounds of the individual letters. Each of the syllables will also be spoken in one of 4 different tones, which is represented by a diacritic above one of the vowels in the syllable. The syllable may consist of an initial, which will be 1 or 2 consonants, and a final, which will be a collection of vowels and consonants. The English language uses letters, but despite this, the representation of words do not necessarily have letters in a standard order which corresponds to how a word sounds. Because of this, some dictionaries have phonetic systems that indicate the sound of individual words based on the order of phonetic symbols. The Oxford dictionaries that I use for translation between English and Chinese use a standard known as received pronunciation. The Macquarie Dictionary uses a slightly different standard based on the Australian pronunciation of words. One combination of vowel sounds, known as a diphthong, is the main difference between the two systems. Both of these systems use a subset of the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols to represent key sounds. An American World Book Dictionary uses its own pronunciation key that appears to use its own standard, but the General American Standard is a quite widely used standard also. Even though a word may be represented by the phonetic symbols connected together, there are occasions in everyday speech that the subset of letters used by the dictionary are not enough to describe the full range of sounds that a speaker uses to pronounce the word. The T sound in tea, tree, and eighth are all slightly different. The set of words tight corner may form a glottal stop at the second T. These variations are understood to occur, but are not represented as symbols by the standards used in dictionaries. Other phonetic symbols within the IPA standard may be used in their place for a more comprehensive description of the sounds produced if desired. These symbols are known as allophones. Each of the symbols in IPA represents a sound made with the human vocal system. Most of the consonants and vowels of the Latin alphabet are used to describe the particular configuration of the vocal system necessary to achieve that sound. The vocal system consists of the lower and upper respiratory tract and associated muscles and bodily walls. The lower respiratory tract includes the lungs, which store air, a membranous tube called the trachea, the larynx, which contains the vocal cords and their opening, also known as the glottis. The upper respiratory tract consists of the pharynx, which is a cavity above both the larynx and esophagus, and the nasal and oral cavities. The vocal system alters the sound produced by the moving parts within it, including the glottis, the tongue, lips, and the soft palate. The palate is a section of bone and tissue that separates the nasal cavity from the oral cavity. The soft palate tissue may move to open or close the opening between the pharynx and the nasal cavity. Whereas vowels are articulated by allowing airflow, consonants are articulated by partially or fully blocking their airflow. Consonants are divided into categories, stops, and fricatives. Stops require that the airflow be stopped at some point in its passage and let out as a burst. Fricatives are expressed through the partial block of the airway, and the air comes through a narrow area. Some consonants can be formed by the blockage at the lips and teeth, and others are formed when the tongue blocks another part of the airway by pressing into another part of the palate or area above the teeth, known as the alveolar ridge. Some consonants are formed by using a vibration of the vocal cords, but others do not require this vibration. These consonants come in pairs B, P, V, F, thorn theta, DT, ZS, SH, DZ, Y, CH, G, K. The shape of the mouth cavity makes a difference in the sound of a vowel. X-ray photographs show that the high point of the tongue corresponds to the type of vowel produced. Some vowels require the tongue to be nearer to the palate, leading to a more closed airway. Other vowels require that the tongue's high point be nearer the front of the mouth. Even though English uses 5 vowels to spell words, the amount of vowel sounds that may be distinguished by tongue position is greater than this. Some other languages may use vowels that require a change of the shape of the lips. Diphthong sounds can occur when there is a shift in position of the tongue from one vowel to another. The quality of a person's speech is determined by the mechanics of their vocal system. Even though women and men may say the same words at a different frequency, it is possible to determine what they are saying by the relation of the amplitude and the fundamental frequency of the voice to that of the other frequencies within the sound envelope. On the other hand, when someone is speaking with a different accent, they are using different pronunciations of words, and consequently there may be words that are not understood. If there is a word such as court, as in the police caught the criminal, and it is pronounced cot, it may not be able to be distinguished except in the context of the sentence. Also, a magical witch could be distinguished from the choice word which, if your accent happens to have an extra phonetic that will distinguish pronunciations. In order to teach Chinese students to use the phonetic alphabet, I have decided that I will expand my flashcards program to include the received pronunciation phonetics. I added a few extra text areas in the graphical user interface, and I expanded the data files so that they had an extra item to specify the phonetic pronunciation. Having thought about the phonetics before having researched them intensively, I wondered how easy it would be to have the program say the phonetics as they were shown on the screen. I recorded my voice and tried to extract sections of my voice that represented each of the 44 phonetic symbols. I ran the program through using a passage from the Speech Accent Archive. I noticed that the results were extremely disappointing. The passage that I was using did not make use of the 44 phonetic symbols, so I altered it considerably. There are possibly passages that are better designed than the one that I am currently using.
In the future, I hope that I will be able to use the phonetics for both English and Chinese to enhance the program. There is a phonetic system called Alphabet that is used in computer speech systems, but it does not correspond exactly with the received pronunciation system of phonetics. So if I were to attempt to use this, I would need to make some compromises to ensure it fits in with my teaching method. I've tried to ensure that I have enough knowledge to teach English, but I understand that if one does not know the fundamentals, it can be difficult to teach, being the sole representative of a language and culture in a strange land.